Hello and welcome to Board Game Gumbo. Today we're unboxing Sleeping Gods by Red Raven Games. And before we get to the main game, we have a few little extras we want to show you. First, we have a little battle board here. The monsters in this game come in these tarot-sized cards, so this is just a little spot where you can put your cards out and have them organized. This is double-sided, and there is different art on the other side, which is just a nice little touch. We also have metal coins. So if you have the deluxe version of the game, these coins will actually be in your box. You can tell because the Sleeping Gods name itself will be in gold. But we've got the basic edition here, so we had to buy the coins additionally. But these are very nice coins. They count as 1s and 3s during the course of the game, so we appreciate the fact that they offer these as an add-on. And now to the game itself. Sleeping Gods is a narrative-driven story game for 1 to 4 players. It has in total about 20 hours of content. Of course, you don't have to go through all of that in one sitting, but obviously a lot of content to go through. We also have the expansion Tides of Ruin, which we'll look at once we're done with this. So first things first, you have your little atlas here. So this will be your maps, and I'm just going to show you this one because this is your starting map. This is basically your board, your game board. Instead of having an actual board that folds out, you have this book. And as you travel to different areas, as you can see here, if you're in this area here and you go south, it tells you what page to turn to, and then that becomes your new location. So if you had traveled south, you would come out, we came from page 2. So you can see that you'd pop out over here. And then obviously there's all these little points of interest that you'll see on the different maps. And when you're in an area with the point of interest, you can go and explore locations. I don't want to show you the last page, but I do want to point out that this atlas only goes to page 19. Although there are spots in the book where you can travel to locations that are essentially not in this book. For instance, here, if we go north here, we go to page 23. Obviously, there's no page 23 if it only goes to 19, and that's what the expansion is for. So if you don't have the expansion, you can still play this game, fine. You just won't be able to go to any location above 19. Basically, this is blocked off for you. You can't go north from here. We've got our rule book here, and it is pretty dense. You can see here the little table of contents. It goes to page 40. This is a storytelling game with a lot of narrative elements, so there's probably going to be a lot of edge cases in the rules, hence the long rule book. But essentially, you'll just be taking actions on your turn. There are 4 actions, I believe, that you can take. You'll be taking 2 of them, and then depending on what you're doing, you may have to make skill checks. There's obviously rules for combat here. So although this book is pretty lengthy, the rules don't seem to be extremely complicated. The synergy tokens can be given from one player to another, and they give additional bonuses. So it's nice that they list what all the bonuses are here in case you have any questions. Obviously, examples of content. They explain the campaign journal, which we'll look at in a moment since it should be one of the things on top. Adding or removing players is pretty simple. Because it's a 20-hour game, you are probably going to play this over multiple sessions, and you cannot play multiple quests at the same time. Once you start a quest, you really have to complete it. There's no system for sort of saving your quest and starting a new one. But adding or removing players while you play is actually really easy because regardless of how many people are playing, you are controlling 9 characters. And on the back here, they have a nice little iconography cheat sheet. So you're controlling 9 characters. If you're playing solo, you're going to be controlling all of them. But if you're playing with multiple players, all you do is you divvy up those 9 characters to how many people are playing. We've got a quick start guide here, so I won't really go through this because this is sort of giving you the opening story. but this will essentially teach you the game as you play. So instead of starting with the rule book and kind of learning all the specific rules, this introductory scenario will kind of hold your hand and go through all the rules one by one as you encounter them. And whenever you're starting a campaign, you are assumed to be starting here, even if you're an experienced player. Then we have our narrative book here. So these are going to be all the stories that you're going to encounter. So like we saw on that map, if you go and explore a location, say you explore location 23, you're going to go to encounter 23 in the book. We got a few things in here, so let's take those out. So you just find encounter 23 in the book, wherever it may be. You're going to read that encounter, do what it tells you. And then at a certain point during the encounter, you'll see, so this one is actually going to send you on to different events, but eventually you'll see something that says return to the ship. And that's when your encounter is going to end. So see here in 19.2, you gain 2 coins and then you return to the ship. So that's the end of your encounter. But as you can see, there are quite a few encounters in the game, and some of them are going to ask you to attempt checks of a certain type. So there's different stats in the game essentially, and you're going to attempt a check. Some of them require certain keywords, which you'll get from quest cards, which we'll look at a little bit later. What else was in that book is here, there's an achievement list, which is kind of interesting. Whenever you finish a quest, you're going to mark off certain things if you've done them. And these can potentially even unlock cards. And there are a total of 13 endings. So if you really want to do everything in the game, you've got a little cheat sheet or checkoff sheet to make sure that you've done everything. You have, this is just for setup whenever you're setting up a new campaign. So this kind of condenses all the rules in the rule book into a very easy flow chart that you just read to set up each game. And once you've done this a couple of times, I imagine you won't really need this anymore, but it's nice to have for those first few times where you're, kind of lost during setup. Here we have our journey logs, and there are quite a few of these. You're going to use one of these each time you start a quest. So you've got things that you would imagine to see. You've got your starting date and your end date, final score for when you're eventually over, number of players, and then you have different logs here to keep track of where your ship is. This is for when you stop playing for the day. So 20 hours of content, maybe you play 3 hours in one day, then you're going to mark where your ship is and all the damage it has to it, any ability cards that your players may have. So when you start up on the next day or the next time you play, you know where all that is. You don't have to keep the game actually set up. Experience here, you're going to mark it as you get it and then cross it off when you spend it. There are 2 types of game modes. There is normal mode and there is brutal mode, and you'll decide which you're playing when you start your quest. In brutal mode, whenever you lose, and there are 2 ways to lose essentially, if all of your players get knocked out or at 0 health, or if your ship is completely destroyed where it's taken damage to every location, then you will lose. In brutal mode, that means your game is over completely, and you're going to mark up your final score and any achievements you got, and that'll be the end of it. In normal mode, instead of losing immediately, you'll mark off a defeat, and then you'll move your ship. Depending on how you lost, either you'll move your ship and heal it completely if your ship was destroyed, or you'll move your ship and heal all your crew if your crew were defeated. And it actually says that here. Okay, so getting into the game itself, we've got some bags over here, some little styrofoam to organize our stuff, and then some boxes. So we got an empty box for a used quest. While you're playing, if you were to resolve a quest card, it just goes in here. That way you can't resolve it multiple times. We've got a nice little box here with a magnetic clasp on it. On the other side, apparently. There it is. And here are a lot of our game cards. So, slight spoilers here. I will show you a couple of these cards. These are sort of the things that you'll run into while you're playing. So quest cards, adventure cards, and then in the back here, it looks like we have the event cards. So let's look at the event cards first. These aren't really spoilers because you're going to be using the event cards pretty regularly while you play. Your event deck is your timer for the game. And as you go through the event deck, after completely going through it, you're going to resolve an event. And then you can go through it a second time, resolve an event, and then finally a third time. After the third time, believe your game ends. But there is a third event that you read. So there are 3 types of events. There's sort of these really bad events, these sort of moderate level events, and then the not easy events, but maybe the less dangerous events. And these will be in a reverse order from this. So your most dangerous events will be at the bottom of your event deck, and then the moderates, and then the sort of easy level ones. On your turn, one of the things you do is you resolve an event card. So you're always resolving an event card on your turn. For instance, here, this one is you come across some timber traders and you can actually pay a coin to get to materials. So that's, if you have money at least, that's a beneficial event. Some more traders here. You can trade food, or you can raid their ship, or you can just tell them have a nice day. As you progress through the game, you'll get to more difficult ones. So here you have tend to the bird and help it fly away. Here's one of the skill checks that we've been talking about. One of the stats is savvy. The way that this works is a combination of things. One is you can assign one of your 9 crewmen, even multiple of them, to the skill check. And they will have, hopefully this stat is why you would be assigning them. So say you assign 2 of your crew members to this check and they collectively have a savvy of 2. Then you're going to draw a card from the top of another deck, and that's going to add to your check. So it's kind of a random chance thing. And then obviously you're trying to get this value. If you fail, in this instance, you're going to lose 3 health. Even if you fail, you still are going to remove a low morale. Or you can eat the bird to gain a meat, and one of your characters apparently gains low morale. So eventually you'll get to the very bad ones, like the hurricane. And either you can turn back the way you came when the hurricane comes out, or you can try to sail through it, again using the savvy stat. And if you fail, you take 3 ship damage, which is quite a bit. So that's how the events work. Again, you'll go through one event every round, because each player is going to activate an event on their turn. And again, that is your sort of your timer for the game. So here we have some adventure and quest cards, and these are kind of spoiler stuff because these are the things that you will be discovering when you play the game. So let's just go to one randomly here, number 22. So this is an item that apparently you found during the course of your game. When you acquire an item, it's sort of a collective pool of items. So this will just go into your item tableau. And what this says is you can activate it for 2 command tokens. And it does this ability, which I believe is block, which makes sense since it's a shield. But a block for 5 is a lot. It also has a value, and I believe this will be related to your in-game score, your final score. So you would essentially add this to your final score, and that would determine what ending you get. So these are things that you can find throughout the course of the game. I'll flip through a couple of them. They mostly look like items. We got some weapons in there. But these are essentially things you can find through the course of the game. You also have quest cards, which are going to be different. These aren't going to be things. These are going to be events that you completed that will help you later in the game. So in the narrative book, the story book that we looked at earlier, there may be something during the course of the game that says you need to have this keyword in order to do this action. And this is how you get these keywords. So if you complete this quest during the course of the game, you will hold on to this card and you will have this keyword. So if an event ever comes up that says, go here unless you have thunder, and then you can go to this other location. If you have this card, you can go to the second location. And we didn't look at it earlier, but if we look at the back of our journey log, there's actually a map. And this map you'll be using obviously while you play. And one of the things you can do with this map is you can write in those keywords. So say you go to explore area 63 and it says, if you have this keyword, you can go to this other location. Then you may want to write that keyword next to the location so that you remember once you get it to go there. So that's all we need to look at really for these, because the rest of them are just going to be more of the same. So we can put these back in the box here. Now I know they sell a pack of sleeves specifically for this game. If you want to sleeve all your cards, that's a pretty tight fit in terms of cards, but I assume that they would fit if you get the sleeves from them. Otherwise, it would kind of defeat the purpose. So what else do we have in here? We got another box. Here's all our sort of bits and pieces. If you had the deluxe version, here's where your money would be, but we don't. So we just got some pieces here and some cards and our ship. The deluxe version also comes with a painted ship, but we just have the regular one. You can see it's pretty nicely detailed for just a ship token that moves around the board, but I guess I'll have to put some paint on that myself. Our pieces here, we got 3 different types, or actually 4 different types. So here we have damage tokens, and this will be damage dealt to players. We'll have some cardboard pieces as well when we get to the bottom of the box. That'll be 5s, but these will be 1 damage a piece, and you get quite a few of those. We've got our command tokens. So command tokens are how you do actions, how you activate cards or activate special abilities on characters, and these are limited. So you can only ever have this total number of command tokens out at the same time. Obviously, there's ways to retrieve them from cards once they're out, but those are your command tokens. We've got ship damage tokens, which are just little red cubes that will mark off if you've done damage to the ship. And then we have sort of our captain figure, which we'll use to mark what area we activate on the ship when it's our turn. And then some combat cubes. So the way that these work is whenever you get into combat with a monster, you can activate characters up to 4 times. You can activate the same character multiple times. So you could activate a character 4 times if you wanted to. But that's how you'll mark who activates for combat. And then once all 4 of these are used, the monsters have a chance to just attack your ship for free, or your characters for free. And then you'll go into another round. Obviously, that doesn't affect you if you defeat all the monsters, but those are your combat tokens. Put all those back in here and look at the cards. So first we have these. These are ability cards, I believe is what they're called. So, okay, so we have 2 types of cards here. These, I believe, are ability cards, which you can assign to characters. And by assigning them to characters, they gain this icon. So these are the skill icons we talked about. I believe this is Savvy, the one that we looked at, but I'd have to actually look at the rule book to remember their names. So the different skill checks will use one of these skill lists. Some characters will, or almost all characters, will have a collection of these icons already on their character board, but you can add these to give them additional strength and a skill. And then we have the level up ones, and these are specific to characters. So this one is specific to Laurent. You can't give it to another character. You buy these with your experience. So this one costs 4. I think this one costs 6. I was about to say, I think they all cost 4, but obviously not. This one costs 7. And so aside from giving them this extra icon, they have a special ability here. So those are the level up cards. So we had some of these in the other pack that were these that we were looking at. And again, you can add these to characters to give them extra stats, an extra stat point, sometimes extra abilities. You can discard them for their command value, or this is also your skill check deck. So whenever you attempt a check, we mentioned earlier when we were attempting a Savvy 6 check, we had 2 Savvy on our characters, but then we're also going to draw a card gives us a value of 2. So now we have 4. So this is sort of a random chance deck that goes from 1 to 6. The 1s and the 6s are half as likely as the other numbers, but 2, 3, 4, and 5 have the same chance in the deck. And so these, you'll be drawing these pretty often. Every time you attempt a check, and I believe you also draw them for combat, you'll be drawing one of these cards. So it's a pretty big deck of cards. And then finally, from that box at least, we have our market cards. We looked at those adventure cards earlier. This is kind of the same thing. These are all items. And you're going to start with 4 of them. You actually see that this one says equipment starting. So you're going to start with these 4. And as I mentioned earlier, any items that you have are sort of in a collective pool, and they're just displayed on the table somewhere so that people can see them. Anybody can activate them. You see the activation icon here, or however many command tokens it takes to activate it. Once you've activated something, so it has a command token on it, you cannot activate it again until the command token has been removed. This one, for instance, just lets you draw another one of these AI cards or action cards. So if you drew one during a check and 4 isn't enough, you could put a command token there to draw another one, and you got a worse result, but you tried. So that's what that one does. We've got another one of the starting ones, lets you draw 2 ability cards. This one lets you turn 1 resource into healing, so you're using your food to heal your players and also remove fatigue. And then this one lets you turn 3 resources into removing fatigue and also removing low morale, which are obviously negative things. And then the rest of this deck of cards, you will have to buy during the course of the game. They have a value on them. And whenever you go to a port or a location on the game board, and I'll show you once we go through these, you will draw, I believe it's 7 of these, and then you can buy as many as you want from those 7 while you're resolving that market action. So there are the rest of the market cards. And I'll just show you on the atlas what you're looking for there. So you're essentially looking for any location that has this symbol. And if you're there, if you're in this location, you can take the market action, and that's what lets you buy cards like that. A few more boxes, empty box and not empty box. And here are our monster cards. And there are quite a few of them. They are numbered. You want to keep these in order. Everything else pretty much gets shuffled. The ability cards, the skill cards, all of that gets shuffled before you play, so it's nice and random. But the monster cards you specifically want to keep in their order, because whenever you encounter a monster, it's going to tell you specifically which monster you encounter. It's not random. So you may encounter monster 1 and 2, or you could encounter monster 8 and 11. So you want to keep these in order, and these do get more difficult as you go. Let's go and take a look at the monster cards real quick. And for that, I'm going to pull out our fancy battle board. It's upside down. There we go. So let's say we're just fighting monsters 1 and 2. So we put these on the board, and these will come out randomly if you have multiple cards. So you kind of shuffle them up and then deal them randomly. It does matter where they are in relation to each other, because you can deal damage across cards. Essentially, the way combat works is you'll be activating a character using one of these cubes, and then that character will be attacking. Each character has a value that they attack for, both damage and accuracy. The armor is what you're looking at here. So this guy has less armor than this guy. He's a little bit easier to hit. Whenever you do hit something, what you're trying to do is cover up all the hearts. Whenever you do that, something is defeated. So if I cover up all 4 of these hearts, I'm going to defeat this monster, which is obviously your objective. Whenever you place damage, wherever you end up placing it, your other damage has to chain off of that placement. So if I place a damage there, I can't then go place a damage over here. Not that I want to, but it's something that you cannot do. So I placed one here, so the next one I could place here. This little diamond icon, which you can kind of see on the card there, is what your synergies are. We talked about those player synergies earlier. Whenever you cover up a diamond, you get to hand the synergy of the character that was activated to another character. And whenever that character that now has that synergy takes an attack action, or I believe an action in general, they can use that synergy, but you can only ever use other character synergies. So it's a little bit of a cooperative element in the game, which is kind of interesting. So obviously, if I'm doing 4 damage, I want to cover up all 4 of these hearts because I'd immediately defeat this monster. If you don't defeat the monster, then they're going to attack at the end of their turn. They get a counter attack. And that's this value here, 3, plus however many of these icons are still showing on their card, which is 1. So this one would attack back for 4. You have to assign that damage to the character that was activated. And if that character completely takes damage down to 0 health, any spillover has to be assigned to another character of your choice. But we mentioned earlier that you can actually cross damage. So this guy is easier to hit. So maybe instead of putting that here, I want to put it here so that my next token I can put here. Again, I'm going across the cards, but I want to start doing damage to this guy because he's harder to hit. So now that I have this kind of this chain going, I can continue to start doing damage to this guy because the damage that I'm placing is still adjacent to damage that I already have on the card. And that's essentially how combat works. There are other different elements to combat while you play the game as creatures get more difficult. You have creatures that fly, for instance, so they have increased defense from melee weapons and things like that. But all of those sort of specific rules are noted in the rule book and on the iconography. So just to show you how difficult some of these monsters get, we'll just go through a couple of them. So you see they have level 6 monsters up here. That one's got a lot of health. These ones that you see a number in the heart, that means that you have to spend that many damage tokens to put 1 damage token there. So if I did 3 damage to this dire Spinosaurus and I want to put it here, I have to use all 3. I'm not actually going to put all 3 on the card. I'm just going to put 1, but it's going to cost me 3 damage to just put that 1 token there. So we have flying here. This Petrodon, I'm mispronouncing that horribly, but we're going to go with that. This Petrodon has flying until both of these spots are covered with tokens. And that gives them +1 armor against melee attacks, which doesn't matter unless you're attacking with a melee weapon. If you're attacking with a ranged weapon, it doesn't do anything. These special abilities you see here, those will activate if they're not filled. So you can fill them to kind of prevent them from getting those abilities. But otherwise, they'll get them when they attack. So the way combat works is the players are going to activate. They have their 4 cubes to activate 4 characters. After each character activates, so after the first character activation, the monster is going to attack back. So you have to denote what monster you're attacking. Even if you don't do damage, they're going to attack back. And so you'll go back and forth. Players will do 1, then monsters, then players, then monsters, up to 4. Assuming there are monsters left, then monsters get a free attack against players. And then you go back to the top where the players will have their 4 cubes again, and you'll continue until either you defeat all the monsters or the monsters defeat all your characters, which is one of the ways that the game ends. So there's our monsters. Finally, at the bottom of the box here, and we'll kind of tip these out, is our cardboard, which punches out really easy because that just popped out on its own. So here is our ship, which is kind of the focus, at least, of our team. So we have the captain token from earlier, and that you're going to use to go to a location. So everything here is kind of laid out in what you do on your turn. 3 things you do on your turn. First thing you do is you do a ship action. You're going to go to a location. You have to go to a different location than you were at before. So if I go to the bridge, next player activates, they can't stay at the bridge. They have to go to another place. So say they go to the galley. That's why you have the player token. Once you go to a location, you're then going to activate it. All these icons you see at a location are what you're getting. So if you go to the bridge, you're going to get an ability card. You're going to get either 3 or 4 command tokens. That depends on the player count. So if in a 3-player game, you'll get 3, and in a 4-player game, you'll get 4. And then you're going to return all command tokens from all cards in play, all cards and characters, back to the pool. And you can do this in any order. So if there's only 1 or 2 left, you probably want to return them all before you take your 3 or 4. Also, this is double-sided because it is different if you're playing with 1 or 2 players. So again, ability card, take command tokens, return command tokens. Quarters, do the same thing. Ability card, command tokens. This time you only return 2. The galley allows you to remove fatigue. The sick bay allows you to heal. And the deck allows you to scavenge, which is these tokens, which we'll actually see in a minute. After you do your ship action, you're going to do 1 event. Again, the first time you go through the event deck, you're going to read story 1. Second time, read story 1.2. Third time, read story F1, which will end your campaign. And then the third thing you do is you're going to do 2 actions. You can do the same action twice, or for every action you do not do, you get an additional command token. So travel lets you move your ship, and it depends on this icon. So it's essentially you're attempting a check, which you can assign your characters to increase your odds. Explore is looking at a feature depending on where your ship is, and that's on your map. So you're looking at different locations. Market if that's available. We looked at it earlier. You have to have that coin symbol on the location that you're at. Allows you to buy things. And port allows you to take the port action, which we'll look at in a little bit. And again, you have to have that icon in an area where your ship is. And that is a player's turn. 1, 2, and 3 is a player's turn. The rest of this is fatigue tokens. So characters can have a total of 2 fatigue tokens. Fatigue happens when you assign a character to anything. So if you assign a character to a check, they get a fatigue token. The second time you assign that character to a check, they get a second fatigue token, which is flipped over. And now they do 1 less damage if they're assigned to combat. And then you can remove these fatigue tokens, obviously, throughout the course of the game so that you can continue to use your characters. If a character has 2 fatigue tokens on them, not only do they do -1 damage to combat, but you can't use them on checks. As you'd expect with a Red Raven game, all this cardboard is nice stock, easy to punch out, no real complaints there. So we have some money tokens. We have that nice metal money that we got extra, so we're actually not going to punch those out. But we have our condition tokens. Players can have 1 of each condition at a time, but not multiple of the same condition. So you can't be weakened twice. but you can be weakened and poisoned. And obviously these all do different things, which it says on the token itself. It also says in the rulebook if that text is too small for you. We have some tokens for our resources. There are several different resources in the game. So we've got meat, we've got carrots, we've got building materials or wood, we've got grain, and those will be sort of the resources you use to do different actions throughout the course of the game. These idols, which you can acquire throughout the course of the game, are going to add to your point total, depending on the number that you find at the end. So you want to find those, but they don't do much for you throughout the course of the game, from what I understand. And then we have 3 of our characters here. And while we're punching out characters, I'll go ahead and explain to you how those work. So the captain is always in use by the active player. And then the other 8 characters are going to be divvied up among the however many people are playing the game. So you always have access to the captain, and then you'll have access to however many characters are assigned to you. These have stories on the back if you want to know your character story. So here we have these skill icons. So obviously the captain is good at everything, or has 1 skill point in everything. We've got Gregory here. He's got 1 point in seamanship and 1 point in strength, we'll call it. And then we've got sort of the mechanics and the perception stat here. They also have abilities that can be activated with command tokens, and you can activate anybody's abilities. So for 1 command token, you can remove low morale from somebody. 2 command tokens, you can add a +1 attack to somebody, and 2 command tokens to add +1 armor to somebody. Again, once something has command tokens on it, it cannot be activated again until those command tokens are returned. So if I activate this for 1, I can't activate any of their other abilities while that command token is still on this card. Every character has health. Every character can have 2 ability cards. This does not count the level up cards. So you can have as many of these as you pay experience for, but you can only ever have 2 of these cards assigned to a character at a time. And then they all have their combat, their sort of innate combat ability here, because you can find weapons that would give you different attacks or augment your attacks. So she has a rifle, it's a ranged attack. Gregory starts with a knife, which is not a ranged attack, so no arrow there. The +1 is your accuracy, so that's trying to hit their armor. Again, you're going to get a card added to it. So if I drew this, she's got a total of 5, and I could always activate this ability to make her a 6. This is the amount of damage that she's doing. So she's doing 4, plus this icon, which she has 1 of, plus you see the flip there, so a card. And then you have your defense value. So that's 3 of your characters. Let's see what else we got here. More of the same here, so we'll leave that there for now. And then more characters. So we've got Laurent here, Kanan, and Kasumi. And then Raphael, Mara, and Marco. And then on our last board here, we've got we have the synergy tokens. So again, these tokens will be given from one player or one character to another, and then can be activated once they are on a different character than the one they belong to. We have just some extra tokens here. I believe this is it's not the first player token, but I forget what it is. We've got sort of a potion here. We've got a sea serpent, an egg. Here's our 5 tokens for our damage. We got the captain token. That is the first player token. So that's the active player will always have this token and always have access to the captain character. We've got these numbered tokens. These will be for different quests. So for instance, if you have objectives, you can put those tokens out to mark them. Here's our port. So one of the actions we can do is port take a port action. And again, you have to have the port token or icon on your location where your ship is. But this is what you can do with that port action. For 4 money, you can go to the inn and remove 1 fatigue token and 2 damage from each crew member. You can go to the shipyard to repair your ship. You can go to the healer to restore a crew member to full health. And then you can also spend XP to buy those level cards. These are the exploration tokens. So one of the actions on the ship is to draw between 1 and 3 of these tokens. And you can look at them one at a time. So say I draw 1, I can see what it is before I decide if I want to draw the next one. Whenever you draw them, so say I draw 2, I have to deal damage to the ship equal to all the tokens. So I have to do 2 damage to the ship. But then I get to gain the resources on 1 token. So obviously I would gain this one because it's a meat and a carrot, as opposed to this one, which is just a meat. So you get all the negatives from all 3 tokens if you decide to draw 3, but you only get the positive from 1 token. And there are, as you can see, quite a few of these, which we'll punch out here. More of the negative effects, more fatigue tokens, more money, more damage. But that is everything in the base box. So let's quickly go through the expansion box, which is the Tides of Ruin. And for the most part, this is just going to be more of the same. But we'll go ahead and take a look at what's inside it. So Tides of Ruin, you do need the base game to play to use this expansion, but you do not have to have this expansion. We've got additional locations, so this is an additional atlas. This one, we'll go and show you one of them. Again, it looks pretty similar to the base game one. We have our new adventure book. So this is just the events you'll run into. We have more event cards that we can add to our deck of event cards. We have more market cards. Take a quick look at them. Have more monster cards. These are numbered as well, so they'll just get added to the other deck in order, going up to level 9 monsters now. And I believe, I don't know if this value gets added. I believe this value gets added for defeating them to your final score, but I could be wrong about that. Then what else we have? We have more quest cards, and we have more adventure cards. So we won't look at those because we already looked at some of them, but we do have these arcade mode cards, which are brand new. So more arcade cards, and then at the back here, some more of our event cards, which we'll separate out. So here are our arcade cards, which are a new thing that they're doing with the game that gets added with this expansion. So our arcade cards here are a new way to play the game. If you don't want to play in the quest mode, which again, it says takes 20 hours to complete, you can play in this sort of shortened arcade mode. And essentially you're trying to complete objectives. So these objectives that you see here, you're trying to complete them throughout the course of the game. So if you're looking for a cursed shrine and you got to complete this perception, and then you're going to gain resources. Some of these are fights, and then some of them at the front here are going to tell you these different challenges that you have to do. So this is just a new way to play the game. If you want to play like a shortened version of the game, there's also different difficulties for this. So you can play a short, medium, or long game, and also, I believe, a normal and hard and possibly even easy mode. You can do that and you'll still get a final score at the end of the game. But this is basically just a shortened way to play the game instead of going through the entire quest. And that's it. That's everything from Sleeping Gods from Red Raven Games.